Hi YouTube, it's your boy Grassy TV and welcome back to my channel. Today we're checking out my full build guide for the Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck in Hero Siege Season 6. Unleash pure brute force mayhem with a Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck. Say that 3 times fast. A tanky, hard-hitting build that turns every swing into a battlefield-shaking event. The setup revolves around wielding a massive chainsaw to deal devastating melee blows, stunning enemies, and smashing through anything in your path. With high durability, life leash potential, and overwhelming physical damage, this build is perfect for players who love getting up close and personal. In the guide, we will cover the best skills, gear, and strategies to maximize your Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck, ensuring that you crush waves of enemies with raw power. So grab your trunk and let's get ready to wreak some havoc on enemies. A quick disclaimer before we get started. This guide was created during the closed beta phase of Season 6 and is based on the content mechanics that were available at that time. Please note that certain features, balance changes, or other game elements may be updated or modified as the game progresses towards its official release, and the information presented here may not fully reflect the final version of the game, and some aspects could be subject to change. While I strive to provide accurate and effective build recommendations, future adjustments by the developers may impact the viability of certain strategies. Always refer to the official patch notes for the latest insights. All right, let's get started with the pros and cons. On the Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck, you have a ton of built-in passives for defense, life, movement speed, attack damage, attack rating, crit damage. It's kind of insane how much you get on a Redneck. Your damage scaling is very easy to understand, and you have the ability to off-screen with a melee build, which I find hilarious. However, the leveling for Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck is a bit slow. You're gonna have to use Chainsaw Slash. It's very up close and personal. It's not the craziest damage. It's okay for leveling. It's also going to require you to use chainsaws for max damage. You have a passive that's giving you damage while using a chainsaw. So this is going to make your weapon selections a little bit limited. And your single target viability at first is going to be a bit rough, but I promise you it'll get substantially better later on once you get your crit chance higher, your crit damage higher, and you find a decent weapon. On a redneck, there are no built-in movement abilities. So later on in the game, there will be some options that we'll have to be able to teleport around and get some movement. But just as a base class, redneck does not have a movement skill. So let's check out some of the skills that you are going to use. Tree Trunk Triumph is our main damage. This will summon a massive tree. It'll cut it down on nearby monsters, dealing increased damage. We are not scaling the arcane portion of this skill in any way. We are going pure physical Tree Trunk Triumph. Our single target DPS is going to be Chainsaw Slash. Also supposed to give us an area of effect like Cleave attack, attaching a chainsaw on a monster that it will spin around. It's really cool. Passives, we have a ton of them. We have Durable Wear that'll give us increased defense rating. This will increase your chance of dodging enemy projectiles and melee attacks. You also have increased life repenish, crit damage, attack rating, movement speed, attack rating, and damage when using a chainsaw. There's an absolute shitload of them. And we also have an active that we can use for burst damage that'll give us attack speed and damage as well. If you are enjoying these build guides, please consider donating. I will have a donation link in the description of this video. Thank you very much for the support. You guys rock. Now let's talk about some of the skill trees here while we're leveling up. At level 1, we don't have access to tree trunk until level 30. It's way up here. So we're going to use either Chainsaw Slash or Chainsaw Massacre while leveling. Personally, I prefer Chainsaw Slash. Chainsaw Massacre can be okay as well. It really comes down to just what you like. So you will see at level 8 that I ended up going Chainsaw Massacre here. I felt like this was a little bit better early just because you can click it once and kind of just spin to win through enemies. Same thing for level 16. You're also going to start splitting your points between Chainsaw Massacre and Chainsaw Slash. Again, however you want to do this, you'll just split your points between them. I don't recommend that you put any points in these passives because the reality is you don't have a lot of plus skills at this point. So the points that you're putting in there, you're not getting a lot of value out of it, right? You're going to get like, 3% or whatever the base is for defense is going to do nothing because you don't have any defense anyway. So it's really kind of a waste of a point. Same thing for level 30. Just continue splitting your points between Chainsaw Slash and Chainsaw Massacre. You can put a point in Revved Up to get some additional attack speed and attack damage. You can also put a point in, I'm not sure what this one's called. This will give you your movement speed, as well as you can put points here in this passive, which will give you additional attack damage as well. So we're gonna either you're going to either level with Chainsaw Slash or Chainsaw Massacre, whichever one you like. Now, once we hit level 60, this is when we get access to our first augment. This is where our skill really can change. I still prefer leveling with Chainsaw Slash at this point. I will have a section showing you the sub skill tree that you would use for this skill. But I would personally recommend you can continue going with Chainsaw Slash until you hit level 100. That's when this skill really opens up for Tree Trunk Triumph. So this is what that skill tree would look like. If you would like to try out Tree Trunk Trap, maybe it's working just fine for you at this point. You Here's what that skill tree would look like. Make sure that you spec out of your strength or intelligence because the synergy is intelligence for whatever reason. So I kind of put that in my notes here. Whenever you are looking at this tree trunk triumph skill, you'll see at the bottom it has a synergy on it that gives it its attack damage. And that attack damage you gain it from intelligence on this character, not from strength, which I find interesting. Either way, be sure that you do that. Now, one thing that you also can do is if maybe Tree Trunk Triumph is your better AoE skill, you could use that, just for clearing out regular monsters, and then you'll go back to Chainsaw Slash and you'll use this to kill, some of the early act bosses. However, you want to make that work. Once you hit level 100, here's what our final Tree Trunk Triumph tree will look like. The main thing that we have here is we just max out our Tree Trunk Triumph and we put points in synergies, points in our attack damage buff while using chainsaws, and movement speed. As well as here's our Chainsaw Slash. This is the same thing pretty much as we had before. This is for our single target. We just put all of our points in Chainsaw Slash, its synergies, our movement speed, our passive, right? I did miss one point here. Make sure you put 1 point into revved up to get your temporary buff. Moving on to sub skill trees. If you're not familiar with sub skill trees, these were added in season 5. You can get to this by simply clicking on this plus sign in the top right of skills. This will open up a new window that looks just like this. You gain 1 point for every 5 character levels for every skill that you have allocated, and you can reset this tree for free anytime. So, starting with our tree trunk triumph tree, this one, if you feel that your damage is a bit low on this setup early, I have a second tree available. It's way more damage, but has way less clear. So, this is the main one that you see in the footage above me here. We have this top left augment that will cause a giant log to come down and it just hits everything. It's fantastic if you're running 3-3 or a bit more of these more narrow zones. We also put 5 points into this movement diminish. No, this will make it so that whenever we're using the skill, we don't take as hard of a movement diminish. So we just run, right? We're just base movement running much faster. We also get a bunch of area of effect. And the second tree here focuses on this top right node. This makes it so that whenever the trunk actually hits the ground, it'll break into a bunch of projectiles, and then those projectiles will home and go find monsters and hit them. I found that early on, this felt a little bit better until I got, a bit more damage from my weapon or whatever it may be. So you're welcome to try both of these. Ultimately, this is what you're seeing in the footage. And then our single target, our chainsaw slash, here's what that sub skill tree is going to be. Now, for attribute allocation, when you're leveling with Chainsaw Slash, you'll put 2 points into strength, 2 points into vitality, and enough energy until the build feels comfortable. Early on, you want to either try and find some mana leech on anything. It doesn't matter. It could be a ring, it could be gloves, it could be an amulet, it could be a charm. Find some mana leech somewhere on your build. You won't need as much energy. However, you do want to have enough energy so that if you get into situations where maybe you're not hitting a target, you don't just run out of mana. You know what I mean? Like try to get like around like 150, 200 mana is a really good starting point, especially if you can find some charms with mana. Like 100 mana on a charm is fantastic early. Now, whenever you switch over to Tree Trunk Triumph, again, the synergy is not strength, it's intelligence. So be sure that you change 2 points intelligence, 2 points vitality, again, enough energy to feel comfortable. By this point, you probably have enough energy. You're not going to need this. And then when you are using Chainsaw Slash for your single target, make sure that you dump all of your points into strength, right? The same goes for Tree Trunk Triumph. I didn't add that into this. I'll do that right now. All your points into intelligence just to get the most attack damage. Now, if you are playing hardcore, obviously you could put some points into vitality to give you a bit extra life, right? Moving on to the gearing section, this is really designed to give you workable suggestions on what gear to acquire at different stages of the game. You as a player need to look at your current gear and figure out what options make sense for you. Due to the addition of sub skill trees, there are some item proc combos that I'm not going to be discussing here just because they're not discovered yet. It's really up to you to experiment on that sense. So For most of leveling, you are going to be searching for either rare or mythic items that will match your character's damage type. In this case, we are a physical character. New in season 6, they have added physical damage or just physical skill damage that does work with it adds to the base damage of the skill and works with multipliers. So things are going to look a little bit different for you returning players from season 5. But there is flat damage for physical skills going into season 6 that scales with multipliers. So be sure to look out for those. But you may come across some satanics that would also make sense for you to use. Now, I can't guarantee that you'll be dropping a specific satanic, nor am I going to tell you to stop to go level for a specific satanic. I think that's just an utter waste of time. So my gear recommendations are not going to include satanics. However, there are some rune words that are nearly guaranteed, as the bases are very common, and you can obtain any rune from completing quests in Act One Normal, Nightmare in Hell. You can obtain any rune up to Vex from completing Act One Normal, Nightmare in Hell. It is random which ones you get, but you can also use the prospect station at the top right of Act One to downgrade those runes into the runes that you do need. Now, this doesn't include the runes that you're just going to naturally drop while you're playing the game. Whenever you're making rune words, be sure you check the runes level requirement and the bases level requirement to be sure that you meet the requirement for both of those. The rune itself will have a level requirement, and the base will have a level requirement. If you're looking in the in-game journal, you'll notice that's pretty much every item in there requires level 52 for you to wear. This is kind of misleading. Again, it's because every base is an S tier base, which requires level 52. If you make something on maybe a D tier base that only requires level 10, right? But your rune requires level 15. Whenever you make that rune word, it's going to require level 15. So be sure that you check these things for yourself. The in-game journal is a bit misleading. Now, for weapons, we're mainly just going to be looking for physical skills, physical damage, enhanced damage, movement speed, attack speed, life on kill, mana on kill, or leech. You can find energy on a weapon if you would like to. Ignore target defense is a very strong stat, or attack rating, as well as strength. Not sure why that I put magic skill damage there. Strength will also give you some additional attack damage. It's at a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, I would recommend that you mule a sword from a demon slayer. This will be a 3 socket D tier sword, two-handed sword. You can make a malice in this. It's very cheap. It's ul F. Now, this is not going to be a chainsaw. So the passive that you get at level um, 16 or 24 that gives you increased attack damage is not going to work with this. However, the damage that you get from the malice is going to far surpass just being using a chainsaw and getting the load of attack damage from the passive. Trust me, go on a Demon Slayer, level 1, Buell, pick up the weapon that's on the ground, run to town, put it in your stash, make a malice on it. It'll feel great. You could also make a Sky Song later on. This could be a decent option as well while you're leveling. Now, for offhands, kind of the same deal. We're looking for these same affixes: life percent, movement speed, attack speed, physical related stuff. You can make a divine contemplation if you have a one-handed weapon. This will give you a ton of resistances. And really, for going through here, it's mainly the same stuff: physical skills, all skills, physical damage, attack speed. You're really looking for the same things on your rares and mythics. Now, for helmets, you can make a Flesh Ripper as early as level 29. This will give you 15% crit chance, as well as some attack speed, some leech, up to 20% all resistances. I highly recommend that you find a 2 socketed helm on the ground. Doesn't matter what tier it is, it could be a D tier, and put a Yemen nut in there. It'll be fantastic for leveling. For chest pieces, we really don't have any good options here. It's just whatever you can find on the ground that feels good. You can make a shadow as early as level 17. This will give you a bunch of movement speed and some ignore target defense, which will help with your attacks, your chance to hit, excuse me. Gloves, attack speed, crit damage, enhanced damage, physical damage. Any of this stuff will be perfectly fine. Same for boots. Now, boots, you can make quick steps. These are actually fantastic. You can put these on as early as level 31. These will give you an absolute shitload of movement speed. You get attack speed, you get life leech, you get everything that you kind of want early in the game. Very nice to make. Just these a 2 socket white base. For belts, I find that finding attack speed on belts is pretty common. So I try and get a thick roll of attack speed on belts, but you can find other things like strength, attack damage, ignore target defense, resistances, life percent, any of that stuff. Same thing for rings, crit damage, enhanced damage. Same thing for amulets, crit damage, enhanced damage, attack speed. So I got attack speed in there twice. Leech, strength, any of this stuff is perfectly fine. And same thing goes for charms, crit damage, attack speed, enhanced damage. Any of this stuff is perfectly fine on your early game charms. Now, once you hit level 60, you should really be at in level. You should really be a nightmare at this point at level 60. If you aren't, I would suggest getting maybe to Rat Den and early nightmare and leveling up to level 60. So I recommend you can farm the like I said, the Rat Den and the outskirts of Anoia to find bases to create some of these early powerful rune words. Uh, Now, once you hit level 60, you should really be in Nightmare at this point. If you're not, get to level 60. I recommend you can go to the Rat Den in the outskirts of Anoia, just right outside of town in Nightmare. Farm that for your early rune word bases and some better gear. So some of those options would be the Ravager rune word or the Martyr rune word. Both of these are very strong options. You'll make either of these on a chainsaw, right? So look for a force lock, a chainsaw, Ravager, Martyr, both fantastic. I prefer Ravager. Very good. For helmets, Flesh Ripper, you hopefully have made one by now. If you haven't, look for a two socket helm. It's super cheap. It's very effective. Has a ton of stuff on there. You might run into some Satanics like Sky Crusader's helmet or Executioner's headplate. Both of these are solid options. Same thing for Assassin's Hood. This got buffed in season 6. It's got a bit of extra juice on here. Or if you find a Judge Jury Executioner with a high roll, like this is fantastic. Getting up to 50% ignore target defense is absolutely stupid. So this could be a fantastic option as well if you end up dropping one. For chest pieces, you're still looking for that mythic chest. There's also some early rune word options that you could go for. Mayhem will give you some enhanced damage. You get attack speed. You get some resistances on it. This is an okay option. It's pretty cheap for an rune, I suppose. If you end up finding the rune in a pull, Gladstone Goose is just great. You get up to 52% all resistances. Going into season 6, resistances have been reworked a bit. It's going to be a little bit harder to get your resistances than before. So don't skip out on it. A four socket base for Gladstone Goose is fantastic. For gloves, we're looking for a crit damage, attack speed, enhanced damage gloves, and any of these other mods that you can get. Same thing on or same thing for boots that we had before. Quick steps are just really going to be our best option here. They're really perfect. You get the movement speed, attack speed, the life leech, just great. Make one if you haven't made one yet. For belts, we're looking for skills, crit damage, attack speed, attack damage, anything that we can get on a belt. I like to get a high roll of attack speed on belts because you can get up to like 80%. Same thing for rings, crit damage, enhanced damage, attack speed, attack damage, any of that sort of stuff. Same thing for amulets, crit damage, attack speed, enhanced damage. And same thing for charms. Crit damage, attack speed, enhanced damage, life percent, mana, leech, resistances, any of that stuff on charms is fantastic. People I think skimp out on their charms a bit because they're trying to get all these satanic charms. Trust me when I tell you, enhanced damage charms do so freaking much early. Same thing goes for crit damage charms. Not enough people pick those up. They're freaking fantastic, especially for the redneck because you get a crit damage passive. So hitting that 95% threshold is going to be much easier on a redneck than other classes that do not have that ability. Now, moving into season 6, star levels as of right now have been removed. So this feature may not be available in season 6. However, I do want to put this information here that in season 5, we had star levels added to the game, just a way for you to upgrade existing items. I do have a full video about this. So if this manages to make it into season 6, I will have coverage for it so that you kind of know what's going on. I'll have a link to this video in the description if you need more information on that in the future. Now, once we hit level 100, we do have a early game budget section available. This is really just designed to help you gear your character as a fresh level 100. There's really no best in slot gear at this point. Most of your items can be swapped around with strong mythics. Your item decisions are really going to revolve around how your character feels over just direct power upgrades. We're really just trying to get you through L1 difficulty and feel good to be able to farm. So you can really put a combination of any of these items together and feel capable of completing hell difficulty and begin pushing even farther. Do not underestimate how strong your mythic items can be. So, for weapons, we're looking for either superior, exceptional, astral, or quantum bases that have other roles on them, like enhanced damage, all skills, attack speed, attack damage, strength based on levels. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, whenever you find a white item on the ground, it can have quality. The quality can be either superior, exceptional, astral, or quantum. The astral and quantum are new to season 6, so it's just how many affixes you actually find on the item itself. So a superior is going to have one, an exceptional will have two affixes, an astral will have three, and a quantum will have four. You're most likely not going to find one of these for a base. You're most likely just going to find a superior, an exceptional with an additional enhanced damage. That's really all you are looking for. This is going to help you make a much stronger weapon. So I do have a martyr and a ravager down here. You can see the attack damage is 328. The attack damage is 382. If we made this on a base that already had enhanced damage, these numbers would be much higher because it has additional enhanced damage. It gets inherited when you make the rune word. So you're looking for on a one-hander around 250 to 300 attack damage, or a two-hander would be 350 to 400. This is honestly pretty low. You can get a dumb amount of attack damage. Like a two-hander, you're looking like 700 plus, and a one-hander, honestly, 400 plus on a one-hander. This is just really your bare minimums that I would suggest that you look for. So again, Martyr, Ravager, they're just very, very strong. Make one, you won't be disappointed. For helmets, most likely you're going to stick with the Flesh Ripper just because it's giving you that 15% crit chance and up to 20% all resistances. Very nice. If you do find any of the budget helmets here, like Teeny versus Grievances, Colossal Avenger, Assassin's Hood, any of these can be decent options as well. The main one I would say is really Judge your Executioner just to get the additional ignore target defense. That's be the best one over a Flesh Ripper. For chess pieces, if you happen to pick up a early Cocoon of Berserker, this is a very good offensive option because it can get up to 3 sockets. You get 100% enhanced defense, some strength, which is also attack damage, some skills, some dual leech, just very strong chest. However, you are going to have to find a way to fix your resistances so that you're not dying a ton. Gladstone Goose can be a good way of doing that as you get 52% all resistances. Just so you know, on Runes in season 5, they're 20% all resistances. Going into season 6, they're only 7% all res. So you could get another 21% all res on the Cocoon if you get 3 sockets on it. And then Mayhem, you can see here, has some all res on there. It has some other additional res, some enhanced damage. This can be an okay option if you just can't find a force socket base or you can't get a pull rune, then you just need the res, you need something. This could be a decent option as well. For gloves, my personal favorite is Siege Breakers. You get the enhanced damage, you get the 25 all res, you get 20 ignore target defense. All of these are just fantastic. Razor Knuckles can be decent. Crabs can be good if you're in hardcore, and Throat Cutters if you have no other option. Another option is if you find crit damage, enhanced damage gloves. Like you can get 100+% enhanced damage on gloves with crit. It's very strong. So if you end up dropping a pair of those, by all means, those can outscale all of these. For boots, you're most likely just going to continue using quick steps. There is some reason you might make a ghost. I didn't put that on here, but if you wanted the ability to phase through enemies, ghost can be an okay option. But quick steps is going to give you the most movement speed, attack speed, the life leech. Just everything about him is great. If you want more resistances, you can go with Hermes boots. He's give you up to 40% all res. For belts, we have Tribal Belt, Knight's Girdle, Commander Sash, Brute's Cord, Butcher Belt, or a Mythic. I put Brute's Cord and Butcher Belt at the top of the list here. Brute's Cord is going to give you that crit chance and crit damage with ignore target defense. Very, very nice. Butcher Belt would give you skills with up to 30% all resistances. This could end up being the better option just to help cap out your res so that you're not dying. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much damage you have if you're dead. No. And you can find really screwed up belts. You can find a 80% attack speed belt with 50% crit damage. It's just crazy some of the belts that you can get. So be sure to keep an eye out for those as well. And then Commander Sash is okay if you just want the res and some PDR, and Tribal Belt if you have no other option. For rings, you're most likely going to be running 2 Kodo Wedding Bands. These will give you a skill with up to 30% all resistances. You get some life, you get some leech. Very, very nice rings. You'll run 2 of those. The other option is you could run 2 rings of the Cow Raven. These will give you 8% increased crit chance with some crit damage. These are okay if this just helps you cap out your crit chance so that you can then put on more crit damage charms. I could totally see that being a viable option. The best ring here would be Elven Grace. They did nerf the drop rate of it in season 6, so it's going to be much harder to get. I do expect it to be a bit more expensive. Once I don't know if people are going to catch on to that. It's a bit harder to drop. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But generally speaking, at the start of a season, it does start to go up in price pretty quickly. So, but this would be your best option. Outside of that, just looking for enhanced damage rings. You can get a an 80, 100% enhanced damage ring with some crit damage, that sort of thing on there. Could also be just a good filler until you can find Elven Graces. Now, for amulets, Raven's Claw is your best option here. You get up to 20% crit chance, a bunch of crit damage, strength, a very it's everything that you need, right? Ravenclaw. Again, they did nerf the drop rate of it in season 6. It could be harder to find. So if you can pick up one early, very strong amulet. If not, All Seeing Eye gives you 3 skills and some magic find, or Calyx Fury can give you some attack speed with a skill. Ultimately, I would say just go for a mythic. If you can't get into a Raven's Claw or an All Seeing Eye, I would probably just pick up a mythic off the ground that has a high enhanced damage roll on, like 100% plus, with some other stats, and just rock that. For charms, we're really looking for crit damage, enhanced damage, resistances, life, movement speed, attack speed, leech. Any of these things on your charms will be absolutely fantastic to round your character out. There are some satanic charms that you could look into. I did list those here, as well as here's a picture of what all those look like. So you can get away with your leech by getting a witch's claw. You can, get a ton of life from Beetle of Life with a noob song with a hardened steel defender. The combo of these three together will give you an absolute shitload of life. So really, any of these charms would be okay to get early. But generally speaking, I personally like to really get enhanced damage charms and or crit damage charms. Just really kind of depends on where your character is at. Now, moving on to the mid game, for physical attackers, maximizing your DPS is going to require balancing multiple attributes. So, in this section, we are going to talk about some of the different systems that you're going to need to consider in order to improve your DPS. First is your attack damage. This is the total damage of your weapon after calculations on it. So, in the example below, you can see that we have a 80 to 95 flat roll, and this rolled 91. This number is then multiplied by the enhanced damage amount to give a final value of 851. This is extremely important to your overall DPS. Making rune word bases on additional enhanced damage rolls will greatly improve your DPS. So, this is essentially your base damage. Everything is scaling off of this number here. So, it's really, really important that you have a good attack damage weapon. Using the same example, you can see that the weapon has a 1.75 base attacks per second. It is then multiplied by the increased attack speed on the weapon to give it its final value of 4.79. So, attack speed on weapons is a local mod. It directly impacts the attacks per second of that weapon. This is not the same for gear pieces anywhere else, right? And increased attack speed on gear pieces everywhere else. So sources of increased attack speed on other pieces of gear is percentual and will only and is calculated on a 1 attacks per second basis. So essentially, what this means is that if you had 20% attack speed on a pair of gloves, this would be zero point 0.2 APS on your weapon. Right. So you want to have enough attack speed to increase your weapon's APS without sacrificing other stats, because there is a soft cap to increase attack speed. You can't just linearly increase your attack speed. At some point, it does start to curve off. So you don't want to just go, balls deep on attack speed, because at some point you're going to start getting that diminishing return. It makes more sense to, invest into other attributes to scale your damage. Now, ignore target defense is your bread and butter whenever it comes to managing your hit chance. So, like you, monsters have a defense rating in which they can dodge your attacks. Currently, you can have the 75% ignore target defense. You want to get this max as soon as possible. It is very, very important to have a 75% ignore target defense. It'll just make your build feel so much better, especially early game. Now, in order to scale your damage to high values, you're going to need your physical damage to crit, right? You're gonna have to scale it up somehow. And that we do that through crit and crit damage. So you can get up to 95% crit chance When you deal a critical strike, your damage is increased based off of the critical strike damage that you have, and there is no cap or diminishing return on critical strike damage. Another very important stat that you need to manage is your deadly blow. This increases your physical damage by 50%. You can obtain 100% deadly blow, making it just an absolute monster of a stat, especially if you're playing a physical build. Getting 50% increased physical damage, it's absolutely huge. You need to get 100%. Crushing blow will also inflict monsters with armor break, and this stacks up to 5 times. Monsters that are inflicted with armor break will take 10% increased damage per stack. So it would be, in this case, 50% increased damage taken by that monster. Very, very strong stat as well. Open wounds will cause the monsters to bleed for 20% of your physical damage. This is really useful for those tankier targets or for bossing. And last but not least, we do have other sources of damage like extra damage. So this will cause monsters. So you take all of these values here and you finally get your DPS. Then you have extra damage like stunned monsters to burning monsters, frozen monsters, whatever it may be. And that extra damage will then multiply all of that. And it's a very, very strong stat to look for on gear as well. So now that we kind of know how we can scale up our damage, let's look at some different weapon options. Now, there's multiple viable weapon choices for the build, each bringing unique strengths and trade-offs. Some options are going to prioritize raw damage output, while others will enhance your attack speed or your crit strike or your extra damage, whatever it may be. Understanding the advantages and limitations of each weapon type will allow you to tailor the build to your preferred playstyle, whether it be maximizing burst damage, sustained DPS, or mobility in combat. So our first option here will be the Thorn of Noxus. This is a new weapon in season 6, and it has an insanely stupid high level of attack damage plus skill, deadly blow, nor target defense, 125% attack damage from strength with up to 6 sockets. You can throw 6 moonstones in it to give it a ton of increased attacks per second because the weapon only has a zero point 0.5 attacks per second. It's a very, very, very slow attack speed. So you can get this up to, I think it's 1.5 after I put all the juice in there. Will make it feel way better to use. It's insane how cracked you can get this weapon. Now, there are still some other options here. Candy Shredder is a really easy early carry weapon. They're generally pretty cheap. It is also a one-hander, so you can pair it with a offensive or a defensive shield, such as an offensive one would be Demon's Mirror. I think it's kind of both. Or you could go for like a gem encrusted shield that'll give you a ton of physical and damage reduction and magical damage reduction. 6 sockets for a bunch of runes, so you get res in there. So there's definitely a combo that you could work with the Candy Shredder. Your best in slot weapon is St. Draxus's Longsaw. This thing is insane, right? It just has a stupid amount of attack damage, 6 skills, movement speed, attack range, attack speed, attack damage, up to 6 sockets. It's your best in slot. It is probably going to be a bit expensive. For helmets, Legionnaire is what you're wanting to make. Chimera is a new option in season 6. So because Redneck has a passive for crit chance, you may not need the the crit chance that you're getting from the Flesh Ripper for as long. So you could move into a Chimera instead. This will give you up to 2 skills, some attack speed, deadly blow, some all res, attack damage. This is a decent option as well until you can make your Legionnaire. Now, if you drop a 2 socket helmet, you could also go with the Delirium. This will give you up to 8 skills. And again, if you find one with some extra plus skills on there, this could be a fantastic option as well until you're able to move into a Legionnaire. The main reason that we're going for Legionnaire is one, you can find crit damage on helmets. You can also find skills on helmets for a base. I wouldn't worry about that for your very first version of it. The main thing that we're getting here is we get 25% deadly blow, which is fantastic. And then last but not least, you can pick up in Nikitas. They're usually fairly cheap at the beginning of a season. So you can see this goes up to 6 skills, 40% deadly blow, some ignore target defense, some attack damage. These are actually pretty nice. Now for chest pieces, there's a few options here. Executioner's Cocoon is going to be your best offensive option by a long shot. It has up to 275 enhanced damage, 28 all res, 4 sockets, 50 strength, which is also 50 attack damage, life and mana leech, a ton of attack rating, 4 skills. It's just a beast of an offensive option. Now, Fortress is not far behind. This only requires an EXO rune, which is a very low end high rune, right? But it won't be too expensive at the start of a season. But you get up to 250% enhanced damage, 25% deadly blow, life, up to 40% all resistances. Very, very strong chest as well until you can afford to move into the Executioner's Cocoon. A couple of other options. If you're playing hardcore, Isarius is Iron Thorn. This is honestly not too far off from even these options up here. You do get a ton of extra damage to stunned monsters, up to 5 skills, combat orders, some physical and magical damage reduction, up to 50 auras and 4 sockets. This is honestly a very competing chess piece. Even for me personally, even though I play softcore a lot of times, I even never rock this in softcore just because I hate dying. I absolutely hate dying. And this will prevent that, right? Same thing goes for Heaven's Might. You get up to 15% MDR and PDR, vitality, 4 skills, 6 sockets. This can be a really good, even mid game chess. Going on the gloves, if you can find some high rolled brawlers, fighter mitts, these are going to give you a ton of attack damage. And these are also target farmable from the Uber boss Sung Lee. So Hell 5 would be the best place to try to target farm it. You can technically drop it in any hell difficulty, but try to get it from Hell 5. The other option you have here is Alley Boxing Gloves. These will give you some extra damage to stunned monsters with some attack speed, some movement speed. These are okay as well. You can also just get a really screwed up mythic with some enhanced damage, crit damage, that sort of thing. For boots, Crush Fleets, they're your best in slot here. They're very, very strong. There's really nothing better until we get into Angelic Rune Words. Up to 6 skills, some Deadly Blow, some Crushing Blow, Leech, ignore target defense, just really everything that you'd want. You also get a Agility proc on Strike. This will give you a ton of attack damage and a ton of movement speed, and this will be up all the time. For belts, Belt to Skull is a really good option if you haven't found a good mythic belt yet, because you do get 25% deadly blow, some crushing blow, extra damage to bleeding monsters. There isn't really a whole lot of sources of extra damage at this point, so this is a really good place to start getting that. And then if you want, you could also try and farm out Hell 5 King Rakul. He does have your best in slot belt. This is 2 skills with extra damage to bleeding monsters, up to 54% before star levels and 16% to all resistances. So very, very strong as well. Now for rings, star leveled Elven Graces is probably going to be your best in slot ring for a while until you can get Destroyer's Ends. These were moved to Inferno difficulty though, so most likely you're just going to have to stick on those Elven Graces for a hot minute. You could also move into some mythic rings that have enhanced damage, crit strike, crit damage, attack speed. Good luck getting all that, but you could rock those until you're able to move into Elven Graces. Now, there is an option. You could get a +3 Azazel's ring. These have had their drop chance nerfs. So it's going to be harder to get a +3 Azazels. But if you happen to find one or you happen to buy one, you could go and farm out Anubis's Soul Gem and make this really screwed up Azazel's Despair. The drop rate for that Soul Gem is currently 1 in 15,000 rolled 9 times. This is actually a buff. It used to be rolled 8 times. They're very, very rare, but you could make an Azazel's Despair and then go and farm out a Rakul's Ritual Band from King Rakul in the Chaos Tower. And then you'd have 2 of these. And these things are fantastic, right? You get everything. You get 3 skills, attack speed, crit chance. You get crit damage. You get a ton of attack damage. They're fantastic. The last option I put in here is a Quickening Zephyr. These will just give you a bunch of movement speed and attack speed with skills. If you don't need the crit chance, right? If you can find one of these that is a redneck skiller one instead of a nomad, you could also rock that as well. For amulets, Griffin Claw is really just an upgraded Raven Claw. If you happen to drop an Eagle Claw from Luna, this can be a decent option as well. Just make sure that you're not losing too much crit chance and you're actually taking advantage of the deadly blow that you get from the Eagle Claw. And then for charms, for physical attackers, critical strike chance and crit damage are very important to your character's DPS output. So you're going to want to look for charms that have these stats. Now, if you're super lucky, you can find some crazy charms like this one here that has enhanced damage with critical strike damage. Most likely, you're only going to find charms that have one of these stats. But again, you can find some really screwed up charms. With resistances changing for season 6, a Tablet of the Awakening with 4 Runes in it can provide you 34% all resistances on just a 2x2. This is actually a lot of all res now. And if you happen to be res capped, you could also go for elemental gems to get a bunch of all attributes. Some of these charms here were listed in the budget section, but they can still be useful for the mid game because you can get leech and skills. You can get a ton of life from different ones. You can get +3 skills. Like these can still be decent options even in the mid game. Now, last but not least, we do have the end game min-maxing. When it comes to min-maxing a character, there's a lot of variables to consider, as well as people just have different playstyles and their goals with their own characters. So, starting in season 6, your siege is going to have a new item called the Satanic Crystal. When cubed with an item, it'll either add a new affix or destroy your item. This takes min-maxing a character to a whole new level. As of right now, I have a possible corruptions list, so my gearing recommendations aren't going to include them. This section will include a build I use for endgame testing, but it can definitely still be pushed further with the new Secant crystals in season 6. So this in-game build is the result of my testing and refinement, and I can confidently vouch for its effectiveness. However, there are builds that, these things are subject to change. They're also based off of personal preference or specific encounters and evolving strategies. There may be more optimal variations depending on your playstyle, the zones that you're tackling, or bosses that you're facing. Feel free to experiment and adapt. The guide really just serves as a strong foundation, but the best build is the one that works for you. So here's just a quick screenshot of what that build looked like that I was playing. And going through the different items here, we have a Saint Draxus, Gabriel Broken Wings. This converts a portion of your attack speed into FCR. You could also go with an Executioner's Cocoon. If you do rock the Gabriel's Broken Wings, you're going to want to run side of the gods for teleporting. Otherwise, you would go for a high roller's Death Crown. Amulet would be a Griffin's Claw. Gloves would be Rimskin Assassins. These can only be farmed from Inferno difficulty Luna now. Violence boots and a quantum base with movement speed, critical strike damage, and strength. Good luck on that base, but that's what you'd want to go for a min-max version of it. Gladiator belt, Azazel's Despair with the new Soul Gems, a cool ritual band. And then for charms, we have Earth Melon, Annihilus, Fulgurite, Torch of Shadows, Torstines, crit strike damage, enhanced damage, grand charms, and all of our relics, Razor Blade, Nunchucks, Butterfly Knife, and Twin Blade. The only thing that I would say could be maybe better here, the belt. There's some the Eternal Belt of War. You can get that from Inferno Sung Lee. That could be a really good option on the build now. So you can switch that out. But that's the min-max version that you see in the footage. For relics, really for physical crit builds, our best relics are Twin Blade, Nunchuck, Razor Blade, and Butterfly Knife. They don't get any better than that. You can switch out maybe one for a Triforce. Triforce can give you up to 10% all resistances. It's been changed in season 6. It used to be 30%. But really, if you want to get the most damage out of the character, you're going to run these 4 relics. Here's a list of some different potions I would recommend on the build. First, we have Elixir of Death. This will give you just enhances all your damage. Rad Bull will give you attack speed and movement speed. Elixir of Unworldly Cognition can give you increased experience. This is nice early. This has also been changed to a heroic, I believe. Witch's Potion will give you life and mana, just like a no shit button. The Gold Inlaid Mysterious Potion is now an angelic potion, but this will give you some magic find and gold find. Empty Bottle of Vodka is going to give you some plus skills. And Bottle of Rad will give you movement speed and phasing. For chest augments, our best option is going to be Berserker's Rage. This is going to give you the most DPS. However, it does decrease your all resistances, so it's just a heads up. The next best option would be Tempest Strikes. This will give you a ton of attack speed and movement speed. Keep in mind, this has been nerfed in season 6. It was 700%. Now it's only 350%. Still absolutely stupid, especially since you're going to be getting most of the additional 300% that you're getting in season 5, which is getting reduced from diminishing returns anyway. So yeah, this is going to be a really strong option. A buffed chest augment in season 6 is a lethal tempo. This will also give you increased critical strike chance per level. It's 8% per level, giving you 56% critical strike damage on this buff as well. So that could be a decent option. I think Berserker's Rage is still going to beat out lethal tempo, and I think Tempest Strikes will probably still beat it out. It really kind of depends on the build. But if you're wanting the most damage, you're going to go Berserker Rage. And then if you want the most speed from your character, you'll go Tempest Strikes. And then last but not least, we have Survivor Shield. This is just really good if you're playing hardcore. an oh shit button or an oh shit chest augment. For hero levels, I do have a full video talking about how to spec your hero level tree, since the hero level tree is generally just providing you with utility over character powder. So there's going to be different situations that you might run into where you might want to use one tree over another. Generally speaking, for a physical base build, I rush charm slots just so I can get as much of the enhanced damage and crit damage charms in there as I can. But there could be maybe another method that you would like to try. I do have a link to this video in the description for you guys to check out if you're looking for some different hero level strategies. As well as I do have a list of all of the glyphs. Currently, glyphs do not provide any character power whatsoever. They're just purely preference based, and they will help you with dropping of different items and certain things like that. So I will have a link to this video in the description as well for you to check out if you're wanting to know, hey, what glyphs do I need to put in my hero level tree, or which ones do you think are good? This will show you all of those options as well. For your mercenary, we're going to be using the Act 1 Night Mercenary. And currently in season 6, mercenaries really only have one purpose. They're just magic find aura bots. So the magic find that your merc has will apply to you whenever you kill enemies. So we're going to be trying to get as much magic find on this guy as we can get. Currently, here's what the skill tree looks like. We're just taking as much damage reduction, life per hit, life regen, armor. Just trying to make him a thick tanky boy so he can, he doesn't die in battle. For weapons, mainly what we're looking for at the start, we're trying to get into a Valkyrie. This is going to give us a huge attack speed aura. At some point, your character is going to just take a massive diminishing return from this attack speed aura. So eventually, you'll probably want to move into one of these magic find options. And also, early, you could go for Aurora's Might. This can give you a huge resistance aura. Something to keep in mind, though, if your Merc dies, that aura goes away, right? So if you're playing hardcore, I wouldn't recommend really hinging all of your reses on a Merc staying alive, but that could be an option as well. And again, the Valkyries is most likely going to be your best in slot for quite a while until you can get pretty good gear to drop the attack speed that you'll get out of this. And just to show you what these other options look like, they just have a ton of magic find and sockets. For chess pieces, you can either go with Oopies, Empires, Military Plate, a Mystic Allure. Try and get your Mystic Allure 2 sockets. Throw Ist runes in all of these just to give you as much magic find as you can get. Same thing for helmets, Harley Quinn crest, Harley Quinn veil, the bucket. The bucket's now been buffed. It has more magic find. It has 5 sockets on it now instead of 4. They throw a bunch of Ist in it. Tons and tons of magic find on any of these. Harley Quinn quest is going to be your cheapest option. It's also a pretty good drop rate, so I can imagine they'll be relatively cheap early. And for offhands, any of these will serve you well. Den Glider Inn, Wall of the Legion, Leprechaun's Greed, a Novice Tower with 4 sockets on it is really strong. Actually, that's what I'm currently using on my character. If you find a Leprechaun's Greed, this is now an SS tier. I believe it goes up to 6 sockets and has a bunch of extra magic find. But Leprechaun's Greed will be your best magic find option. But I can imagine it's going to be expensive. Now, for loot filters, to make highlighting items easy, I'll quickly explain how to put on your loot filter in less than 30 seconds. You're going to press Escape, Options, Gameplay, go into your loot filter. Your screen will look like this, where you can see the highlight settings on the right side. Simply just to select your physical attacker. This is going to ensure that you're going to get highlights and beams on items that have physical attributes that you care about. And if you can look on the left side here, you'll see that you have your filter settings. You're simply just going to collect on these presets as you level through the game. So while you're in normal, you'll be on the normal preset. While you're in nightmare, you'll be on the nightmare preset. While you're in hell, you'll be on the hell preset. So super easy to follow. Now, I am going to have some loot filters that are starters, depending on what archetype you're playing, that I will be using at a season start, as well as I will have endgame filters that we will make that I'll end up putting in all the links of my videos. That way you have endgame filter options. So if you want to use a filter that I've created, I will have those available sometime before the season starts. Now, some additional helpful resources. If you're a new player, I recommend you hang out and listen to some of these things. They're going to help you with just getting a basic understanding of how Hero Siege works. Or maybe you're a returning player and need some additional information. First off, we have the Ultimate Beginner Guide. I made this right before Season 5 started. I have a ton of information in that. It's a 2.5-hour video for anything and everything that you would want to know about Hero Siege. There's timestamps to everything. Really good resource. Now, before you get started, I do recommend that you put on your companion. Everyone gets a companion for free. If you need to set up your highlight filter, we have instructions on the video on how to set up your highlight filter. Configure all your controls. Here's my current settings. You can see that, I like to change my min map color, my map settings, different things like that. I also suggest that you change your minimap hotkey to tab. This will make your minimap overlay look like mine, or look like it'll be permanent, like in D2 or PoE. Make sure you swap your FPS to 60 FPS or 60 frame rate. Trust me, it's going to be a massive performance increase. And on your skill bar, this just kind of shows you how to assign skills to your skill bar. Now, while you're leveling to level efficiently, there's sources of additive damage and skill damage. Additive damage is literally additive. Skill damage will increase the base damage of your skill, and then it's able to be multiplied through multipliers. So it's important to know the difference between these two. Here's kind of a quick explanation. So generally, while we're leveling on the Tree Trunk Triumph, we're looking for sources of physical skill damage. This is going to give us the most amount of juice on our character. But really, really early, you can get additive damage that can also kind of float you through the first couple of acts, but you really want to be looking for physical skill damage to get the most out of your character. Now, while we're leveling up, there are definitely some good zones that we can go to help us get some experience or to find items. Here's generally some of those that most people will go to. So in normal, you can see that we go to Rat Den, Black Tower, Sand Cave, Forgotten City, Devil's Hole Dungeon. Right. Once we get into Nightmare, most people really only go to Rat Den or Sand Cave. And really kind of the same thing for Hell. Most people go to Rat Den or Sand Cave just to farm out gear in there as well. So here's just a whole list of different places that you might want to go to while you're leveling early if you need some additional experience or you just need to farm for some extra gear if you're having trouble. Now, there are no required quests while you're leveling. You don't have to do any quests. However, I do recommend that you do your quests in Act 1 Normal, Act 1 Nightmare, and Act 1 Hell, because you do get runes up to Vex from each of these that you can prospect down. Also, in Normal, you can get a Speed Potion and a Speed Charm that can be very helpful for those for leveling, especially on the Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck, because you do not get a teleport or any like movement skill. So getting just flat movement speed can make quite a difference in your leveling speed. If you want to know some more information about season six, I will have a link to the full patch notes in the description of the video. There's a ton of stuff happening for season six, so be sure to click on that and kind of read through and see what's going on. I will also have a link to the official Hero Siege wiki. This is maintained by a few mods within the community and some other players. So I can't say that it's going to be completely updated for season six, but there's a ton of just general information here that if you need some more knowledge, it's definitely a good read. Now, once you hit level 100, there are some different things that you may want to do. I get a lot of questions from people that say, "Hey, I just hit level 100. Now what do I do? Like where do I go? What's the point of me being in the game right now?" So I do have a link to a video that will discuss everything that you should do as soon as you hit level 100. It's just some early game progression tips and tricks, as well as it will have this entire written guide to give you, a written format that you can read through if you would prefer that. Tons and tons of information here on what to do as soon as you hit level 100. Also, there is the Hero Siege Helper app. Be sure you bookmark this. This is a fantastic resource for tons of different reasons. One thing that I use it for the most is if I have a bunch of keys in my inventory and I'm like, shit, I don't remember if this key goes to this dungeon or that dungeon. There's a spot in here where I can go and see all the keys and the dungeons that they're attached to. So it's just a really, really cool website. He's also working on a build simulator, like a POB sort of thing. So that's really cool. Be sure you bookmark this. Very, very good resource. And last but not least, I will have a link to all of my builds in the description of the video if you want to check out anything else that we've got going for season six, any of the other build guides. I am pumping out a ton of them so that we can be sure to get through as much content and get people ready for season six. So, yeah, with that being said, that is going to wrap up this video on the Tree Trunk Triumph Redneck in season six of Hero Siege. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all future Hero Siege related content and news. Come check me out live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Graxi_TV. We are streaming the season six beta pretty much every day. I am working on some of these videos a bit more, so it's kind of cutting out from my stream time. But we will be leveling a Stormweaver here pretty soon. So come say hi there. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.